Morning, everybody. Sunday morning. Lord Buddha explained that the cause for a human birth, so we're all sitting here with human bodies, it seems, the cause for a human birth is having kept 5 precepts in past lives. So to be here with this particular body, we understand that you've been virtuous in past lives. You've had good ethical standards, probably for several lives, possibly many lives, that you would meet the Buddha's teaching, would also be conditioned by having been generous, having been virtuous, and probably having practiced meditation before also. So in Asia, this kind of monks can make these kind of statements, and that's most people don't question it. But in more industrialized, materialistic cultures, sometimes it's not a given that people believe these things. But these kind of beliefs, I believe, are skillful. They are skillful. Ajahn Achalo, my main teacher in Thailand, frequently explains to people that if they're not keeping the 5 precepts, well, first of all, he explains the benefits of keeping the 5 precepts. So the benefits of keeping the 5 precepts is one has a certain inner confidence, self-esteem. At the end of the day, one feels like one is a good person. And the drawbacks of not keeping the 5 precepts is remorse. One can experience a certain amount of remorse and a certain lack of confidence, ill at ease, anxiety, lack of self-esteem. So on one level we could think, these monks telling us to keep the 5 precepts, it's like, it's boring, it's oppressive, come on, we need to have a bit of fun. One level the mind can think like that. But what the monk's duty is to point to the reality of your mind and your experience. It doesn't really have much to do with what the monk is saying. It has to do with, is this true or not? If you keep the 5 precepts, do you feel better? Is there a lack of remorse? When you break them, if you're honest, if you're truthful, if you look inside when you break them, is there an increase in anxiety, more remorse, less clarity? So this is, as Buddhist practitioners, this is what we have to be truthful, don't we? We have to have a close look at our reality, our mental reality. We can always justify, human beings can justify what we want to do, and our unskillful habits, we can defend them. But if we're truly interested in being peaceful people, wise people, and if we believe in karma, introduce several of the themes of this talk. So I've made several statements. But first of all, I say this, what I was saying, Ajahn Achalo says in Thailand frequently, he says, if you're not keeping the 5 precepts, he says, your body is human, but your mind isn't completely human. So he says, if you're not keeping the 5 precepts, the level of the mind isn't functioning on a completely human level. So that's a pretty challenging statement, actually. And I've always admired his courage in telling, because many of the people who come to Ajahn Achalo's monasteries when he gives his talk, many of them aren't keeping the 5 precepts, actually. Thai people like to have a drink and seem to like sex quite a bit. So it's not a given that the people in the monastery are keeping those 5 precepts, but what Ajahn Achalo seems to do is he'll lift a faith, explain the benefits of keeping the precepts, but then admonish people. The other thing he says is that of course people break precepts occasionally, that's normal enough. We have periods in our life perhaps where, you have periods in your life perhaps where keeping the precepts more strictly, and periods where they're not so pure, and that's kind of normal. But the important thing is that we're training with them, that we're taking them as a standard, and that we're understanding if the Lord Buddha recommended these, he had good reason. And then we try to, as I was saying, we're born with this body and with this opportunity because of previous causes, previous good causes. So one of the values or important functions of maintaining the precepts is taking care of that goodness and hopefully building on it, not letting it degenerate. So I've referred already a little bit to past lives, and then of course the implication is future lives as well. So Ajahn Achalo, he would say to people, so if you consistently break the 5 precepts, you can't actually take it for granted that you will be reborn as a human being. If the mind is not functioning on the level of being truly human, it is in fact likely that you won't be, which is a very serious statement to make. But I believe he wouldn't be saying this if he didn't know it. If he didn't know that this was the case, he wouldn't be making such a statement. So it's a serious thing to consider. Because Australian popular culture won't tell you that. Australian popular culture will tell you that you're a good bloke or a good Sheila if you have a few beers, and stealing from the government isn't a problem if you can, and hiding something from the taxman if you can, that's a good thing, and etc. So we have to have a look at where are we taking our cues. Who are we letting inform us with regards to our level of virtue? Then I just thought I'd like to tell a few stories now, and then weave some of these themes in. Stories about ghosts and devas, because I think it's helpful if people tell stories of their own experience. Kind of can bring this, and again coming to this theme of what is a ghost. So a ghost would probably be someone whose precepts weren't kept so well, and who might have died in a confused state or didn't have enough merit to move on. So if one doesn't keep precepts, or one dies with a lot of confusion, or perhaps a heavy karma ripens from a previous life, it's possible that one can get born in a ghost state. Similarly, if one is virtuous and also meditates and is generous, well then it's quite possible, even likely, that one could get born in a heaven realm or in a deva state. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some experiences which I think had something to do with ghosts and or devas, angels, not from the perspective of someone who can see them. I don't have the purified divine eye, although I know some monks who I believe do. But I'm not coming from that perspective. I'm just going to talk about some really kind of obvious examples of interesting things which happened and share that with you for your contemplation. So once at Wat Nana Chat, first of all I say that I do believe that if someone is virtuous, angels or devas, some of them will take care of you, at least some of the time. So virtuous people have guardian angels, you could say, and I've talked with some of my teachers about this, and they say that it is the case. That if you are virtuous, that other good beings that cannot be seen take an interest in taking care of you. So it's not that they're there all the time, but they'll be there probably at important times or some of the time. Because these devas are living in a parallel universe and they've got their own lives. But I guess, maybe if we have past karmic connections with some of these beings, and they have a sensitivity, they might be aware when we're in trouble or if there's a good opportunity or whatever. And so devas can sometimes, I believe, do things which... So just going to give one example. I'll give several examples. One time when I was at Wat Nana Chat, I think I was the guest monk at that time. I think it was my 8th Pansa. It was about 6 years ago. I was doing quite a bit of service at that time, if I recall. I was a guest monk, had to chat quite a bit and receive guests. And then we tend to get up early and we have this big meal once a day. And then most monks will have a nap, a siesta, in the middle of the day. It's very helpful to have a half an hour lie down if you've had a big meal, and then you feel fresh in the afternoon and you can stay up to quite late. But during this period I was a bit tired, and my midday nap was getting a bit long, and it was getting past the 2-hour point at one point. And I remember waking up in my kuti, which is in a forest at Wat Nana Chat, and I was thinking, if I was my guardian angel, I would really kick my butt right now. So I was thinking that. So then I got up from my mat, my bed, which had a little pillow on the mat, on the floor in this kuti. And I noticed that there's a bit of dust. There's a lot of bugs in Asia, a lot of dust. So I saw this dust and these bugs, and I thought, okay, I should sleep. So I went, the broom was outside. I'm going to get my broom, one of those grass brooms, sweep the kuti, and do some sitting meditation. So I opened the door to get my broom, and a snake came in the door the moment I opened it. And then, what do you think it did? It went to my pillow, and it crawled up in a coil under the pillow. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. And I thought, now that's quite an admonishment, isn't it? It's like bhikkhu, the pillow is dangerous. It's like, so the snake didn't do me any harm, but it seemed to me to be a very clear message there. And I said, yes, I'm aware the sleeping thing's becoming a bit of a problem. Now please leave. And so I got the broom and I encouraged the snake to go outside. But that was one interesting example, I think, of probably a subtle body being influencing another being to send a message to a bhikkhu to try to take care of his virtue. So that would be my interpretation of that experience. Another thing that happened once was after my 5th pansa, I was on Tudong. So the monks, after their 5th pansa, you have permission to make your own decisions and go where you want to. So it's a bit of a tradition in Thailand that you, after your 5th pansa, you kind of break out of the monastery with your bowl bag and you hit the road. Because for years you've had this kind of morning chanting, evening chanting, and all this kind of, you have to be here at this time. It's kind of traditional monastic training. And you have to go to the vineyard study, you have to go to the afternoon sitting, you have to be at the morning chanting, you have to. And young men can experience that as oppressive sometimes. So one finishes, you get out of your 5th pansa and there's this sense of, okay, the open road. And so, and then within not long you miss the monastery, but anyway. So I was on Tudong, and at some point, I'm not proud of this, but anyway, at some point I started to smoke cigarettes, because in those days the Dhammayut tradition has a lot of senior monks smoke cigarettes, because I don't know why, but whatever, it was in that culture. And even the enlightened arahants, many of them smoked. So it just turns out that in the Dhammayut forest monasteries there's large amounts of tobacco and the roll your own kind of stuff. And so on Tudong you walk for many hours in the sun and you've got these heavy bags. And so I did discover that when the body's very fatigued and tired, if you have a cigarette, it feels a bit better. And if you're hungry late at night, also, if you have a cigarette, you don't feel so hungry. And also, if you feel a bit lonely, you have a cigarette, you don't feel so lonely. So I was out wandering, and had been wandering for a little over a month, and I realized that, in the past when I was in the monastery, if I felt a bit tired, I'd try to go and meditate. If I felt lonely, I'd meditate. If I felt hungry, I'd meditate. And I noticed that here I am on Tudong, and when I feel any of these things, I have a cigarette. So I thought, okay, so things seem to be degenerating, and so I gave up the smoking. But then it was a couple of weeks later, and I was walking in the morning, and I was thinking, yeah, I know I've given up, and I know smoking isn't good. It's not good for your health, it doesn't look good, it's not inspiring, but you know what? I just want one. And it's not against the precepts. And I didn't think just that I wanted one. I thought, and you know what? I want a menthol one. And by then I had a favorite brand, which is called Saifon, which means falling rain. It's a Thai brand of menthol cigarette. So I was thinking, I want just one. I want one of those falling rain cigarettes. So you're probably not going to believe me, but about 100 meters later, on the road, before my feet, was one perfectly clean, fresh, falling rain menthol cigarette. And I thought, okay, so now if you understand that some of the enlightened teachers of Thailand were smokers, well then some of the devas probably don't think it's such a bad thing if monks smoke. I think, well, if he wants one, he wants one. And I don't know how it happened. I don't know if the deva had to steal that from somebody. I don't know how it ended up there. And I don't know for a fact if it was a deva, but I did notice. That's very interesting, isn't it? Because, and many monks experience this as well. Like, it's often the case, like, you're trying to be with Buddha, you're trying to be with your footsteps, and you're trying to contemplate painful feelings, because the muscles get fatigued, the bags weigh on your shoulders, the sunburn blisters, it's difficult. And so you're practicing with these kind of things, and every now and then your mindfulness slips and you think, well, yeah, you know what, I just really want a Coke. And so many monks have had this experience that not long after thinking that, a car stops and someone gives you a Coke. It's fascinating. So it happens a lot. And it's just kind of sharing this as another example to suggest that perhaps subtle-bodied beings who are somewhat close to the planet can hear our thoughts. And perhaps they do things to encourage us, or perhaps they do things to admonish us, depending on what seems appropriate. So I'd like to give another example. This is more in terms of, I think, the merits that people have. Once I was in a jungle on an area on the border of Burma, and Ajahn Achalo came to visit during this time. I was very fortunate. That was the first time I met him. That was my second pansa. And not long after that, he became my primary teacher in Thailand. But he was there with a group of monks for about 5 days. And we were having several conversations. And the group from Wat Nanachat was about to walk into the jungle. So we decided that we would leave that place and then walk in with them. It's a bit of a tradition at Wat Nanachat to walk into that forest retreat area. And most of the monks from Wat Nanachat spend March and April in this area of forest, deep forest, in the hot season. So we were driving out with Ajahn Achalo, to meet the group from Wat Nanachat. And one of the things we were talking about, Siddhanta, was Ajahn Siddhanta. He's now an Ajahn. He wasn't then. He was a good friend of mine. Now he's an abbot of a new monastery in Portland, in America. But he was saying to Ajahn, you know, Ajahn, I think I must have made a lot of good karma with food, because often when I just think I would like to eat something, it comes the next day. He said, suppose I was to say to you, Ajahn, I like pizza, you know. I said, you know, many times I might say that, and then the next day pizza comes. And then to Ajahn said, yeah, so it's possible. It's possible that you've given a lot of food in the past, possibly to monks. And so this is one of the things that one of the ways it can ripen when you think about something that you want, it comes. This is a result of merit. It's not. Of course, there's monks who try not to do that. And I think yesterday was my birthday, and I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want too many cakes. You see, it's not good to eat too much cake when you're trying to meditate all day. But anyway, so the next day we left this jungle and we were on a road in the middle of nowhere, and literally no village for many, many, many kilometers. And the place where we were coming from was a place with no village. It just has that monastery. So when the monks stay there, there's a kitchen, and they prepare food for those monks for that period of retreat. And so this car is coming, and it stops. And he said, oh, I heard the monks, talking to the monks, I heard there were some monks out there, so I was coming to make an offering. I said, oh, well, we've just left, but there are some monks there. And the driver said, well, okay, but please accept this for now. And he handed him a pizza. So it's in the middle of nowhere, and there's not even a village, and this monk who had said he has good karma with food had said, suppose I said I like pizza, that pizza might come tomorrow. And it did. So again, it's like there's several things. It is speculation. I guess you can't prove it, but one theory, one likelihood is that yes, that bhikkhu has offered a lot of food, and yes, possibly devas are involved in listening to the thoughts of monks and practitioners and whispering in the ears of donors what might be appreciated. So another thing, and I better not mention the name, but I just wanted now to give an example of monks, teachers reading the minds of students. So I have to be careful because these monks are very modest and they don't like it if you reveal their skills. So I've got in trouble in the past for mentioning names, so I'm not going to mention any names. But again, when I finish telling these stories, I'm going to try to make a few kind of points or pointers. So I was staying as a junior monk with one revered meditation master in Thailand, and we were having a cold snap. By that I meant that it got down to about 20 degrees. And now when it gets to 20 degrees in Thailand, because people are so accustomed to the heat, their lips turn blue and their skin cracks. And it's unimaginable. If you live in Melbourne, you couldn't really imagine that. But in Thailand, it really isn't the case that if it gets down to 20 degrees, their skin starts to go, and they go blue, and they look like they look really, really cold. So someone had made a donation of baby oil for the monks. Thais are very solicitous and kind towards the monks, and so someone turned up with a bunch of small bottles of baby oil so that the monks could rub their cracking skin. And so this monk was coming towards me with this bottle, the Ajahn, a very sweet Ajahn with a lot of metta, was giving his monks some baby oil. And a very tender gesture of nurturing. And this realized master was coming towards me with this bottle of baby oil, and I didn't have so much mindfulness, and so I've never liked oil since I was a child. I don't like greasy feelings. And I remember seeing that oil and I was thinking, I don't like oil, I like cream. And this monk stopped and turned around and walked away. And I felt terrible. I thought, Achalo, here an enlightened master is going to give you a gift, and you're going to think about your preferences. And I was very embarrassed. But then what happened the next day was this monk called me to his seat. He said, Achalo, my knee. He said, come here, Achalo. So I went there, and he handed me a bottle of cream. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. Again, it's very interesting, isn't it? So a lot of interesting things are happening there. One, he wasn't judging me for having preferences. He just, on one level, obviously he heard, oh, he doesn't like oil, he likes cream. And so he arranged, or someone arranged, and the cream came, and he gave me some cream, vitamin E and aloe vera. It was very nice. And so I still remember that, and I was like, that I think was the first occasion which really helped me to understand that this mind-reading thing isn't, it's real. It's like, I didn't say to this monk, I don't like oil. And I didn't make any gesture. So the only way that he could have, when I reviewed the situation, the only way he could have known that was if there's this phrase they use in the sutras, embrace consciousness with consciousness. So if a monk has a very developed meditation, he can embrace, or nun, your consciousness with his consciousness and read your thoughts as if they were his or hers. So there's been many subsequent experiences since then where it was very obvious that some of these masters know exactly what their disciples are thinking in extraordinary detail and subtlety. So also this points to something. One of the points I'm trying to make, and I think this is important, is that because we live in a very materialist culture and all sorts of assumptions are affecting us, that I am the body is very deep, and that kind of nihilistic thing that's in Western culture, scientific, so not actually based on science, but science believed it for a period of time, that, and they're discovering otherwise now, I think, but that when the body dies, consciousness dies, that consciousness exists because of the body. So in Buddhism we don't believe that, because the body comes to be because of consciousness, so propelled by karma. And then, so this sense that the mind and the body are separate phenomena. So this is actually a very important Buddhist principle to contemplate. The mind and the body are separate, but they live together for periods of time. It's like the mind is with the body now. But at the time of death, consciousness has to go on, and the body isn't going to go on, is it? The body's going to be, the Buddha says, in not very long this body will lie on the earth like a log, like a useless log. And he says about his own body. So it's not the body that gets reborn. And many people can notice, if you go and you look at a corpse, if you do see someone that's dead, a relative or something like this, you can see that the body's there, but there's this sense that the person isn't there. It's just that many people have that sense, and it's a very valuable thing to see, actually. When you see your friend, or your mum, or your dad, or whoever it was, and you're looking at the body, and many people have that sense to say, yeah, they're not there. The body's there, but they're not there. So that's something kind of, many people will have that experience at some point in their life. And so this is a good thing to contemplate, isn't it? So what was it that was there that you thought was your mum or your dad or your friend? So it's their mind, isn't it? And it's like, and then this whole phenomena of being able to read minds. So what is that? It's not a body that reads someone else's thoughts, and it's not a brain that reads someone else's thoughts. It's a faculty of mind. So I don't have this skill, but I've met some people who do. I think it's valuable, and once again in Thailand it's just taken for granted that the enlightened masters can read people's minds. It's a given. Nobody doubts it for a second. They're very paranoid when they're around their teachers. They know that he or she's going to see everything. but they also know that they have a lot of metta, so they probably won't scold them. Sometimes they do, for their benefit. So just another example, another story from India. I was doing an extended period of pilgrimage last year, and I was in Ladakh with a good friend, a close student. We were staying in a small guest house on the edge of the village. We had the whole upper floor. It was a very peaceful place and a beautiful place, beautiful Buddhist family. And they were doing their long puja in the morning, their long puja at night, and their full-length prostrations, and very devout Vajrayana family in that Himalayan India. And so he was meditating with me in the afternoons. I'd invite him to my room, and I'd set up a shrine, and we were meditating. And so we were meditating, and at the end of, towards the end of an hour, there was a Muslim call to prayer, because there's about 10% of Muslim population in Ladakh. Ladakh is close to Kashmir in northern India. And so there's that loud prayer. And then I was thinking at the time, towards the end of the meditation, okay, it's close to the end of the meditation, I looked at the clock and I let my thoughts wander a bit, and I was actually thinking, Ladakh was a very important place during the time that the Islamic Turkish invasions were occurring, because a lot of Buddhist scriptures and statues and teachings were there, and the Muslim invaders didn't make it as far as Ladakh, those Himalayan valleys, because it's very difficult to get to. And my friend, who was meditating behind me at that same time, was thinking, this is a predominantly Buddhist place, and it's just too loud. And I'm going to write a letter to the tourist authority, and I'm going to tell them to tell those Muslims to turn down that volume, and blah, 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 blah. So what happened at this time was we were in a room meditating, and there was a wooden shutter, and he and I felt something cold move into the room, and the candles fluttered, and this window shut by itself. And we both got a chill up our spine. And Francois, he's French, he said, "Ajahn." I said, "Yes, Francois." He said, "Something is wrong." And I said, "Yes, Francois, I think possibly a ghost just came into the room, and I've got a funny feeling it's Muslim." And we both felt like a little unsafe. It was a very upset energy. And I said, "Okay, we better do some chanting, Francois, let's do our..." And so we did the Metta Sutta, and started dedicating merit. Now, then I asked him when we left the room, and I was thinking about it, and I asked him, "Well, what were you thinking just before that happened?" He was thinking, "Yeah, Muslims, Islam." And I said, "You know what I was thinking? I was also thinking about when the Muslims kind of killed all the Buddhists and destroyed all the temples." And so I said, "We need to make it a practice. We need to include Muslims in our loving kindness meditation, Francois." And so then I was talking with the owner of the guest house, and I had no idea, we didn't know any of this, but it turns out that the property right next to the guest house was owned by a Muslim family, and that Muslim family were trying to get a title deed. And the predominantly Buddhist government in that region was giving them a hard time, and I don't think they got their title deed. So one, I don't have the skills to know for sure, but one could deduce that perhaps it's possible that, and it's a good thing to contemplate as well, that a being who was very attached to that land, who had a Muslim faith, upon dying, was still there, without a human body, but there, probably as what we would call a ghost. And that subtle body being had the capacity to hear thoughts, which is what is said about ghosts, by the way, and devas, so they hear our thoughts. So we have to be careful what we think. There's a sense of, okay, so this is the thing about in public and in private having thoughts of loving kindness. And just to be aware that when we're by ourselves that it is possible that our thoughts affect beings. And that the Buddha praises having even thoughts of loving kindness to the degree that we can. And certainly not to indulge kind of really angry thoughts or grudges. And so on that occasion we did dedicate merit, and that kind of energy hung around in the room for about a day or so. And I remember I went to the window at some point and I said, "Look, okay, you're Muslim and I'm a Buddhist. And you want this land, but this is my meditation space. So let's make a deal. You stay over there and that's yours, have it, and we'll stay here and we won't go there, and let's be friends." Let's be friends with healthy boundaries. And the energy did go away. It's just a sense of making a compromise, and giving each other some space. So seeing if I have any other interesting stories. I do, but just want to check, are people bored with these kind of stories? Would anyone like to hear any more interesting stories? Okay. Okay. Told you about the pizza. Told you about the snake and the cigarette. Okay. So this is a nice story. When I was in Bodh Gaya 2.5 years ago, so it's been said by one of the realized masters of Thailand who has a divine eye, purified divine eye, he said at the Bodhi tree, at the Mahabodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, there is a little deva living in every leaf. Because it's a place that, especially if one was a Buddhist deva, it's the kind of place that one would want to live. And then when those leaves fall, apparently that deva has some choice about who to give that leaf to before going up to the top of the tree and moving into a new leaf. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I have seen some very interesting things happening around the Bodhi tree with Bodhi leaves. And some people go and stand under the tree and say, I would like a Bodhi leaf, and one falls. And other people do that 100 times and one never falls. You know, you could believe either the theory is true or not, but you could also believe, or maybe it does depend on one's level of merit, one's level of sincerity, whether or not you are attractive to devas. But so I was meditating. I made a vow to do a certain amount of sitting meditation. And now everyone gets sick in Bodh Gaya in winter. You get chest infections. And so I was sitting under the tree early in the morning and it was cold and I had a chest infection. And I was thinking, after about an hour, I was thinking, you know, this really isn't working. Maybe I should be in bed because I am sick. And I thought, no. What particular virtue you're trying to cultivate here, Ajahn Achalo, during this period of time is discipline, patience, a consistent effort. So the point isn't to be peaceful. The point is that you came and sat anyway even though you felt sick. That's the point. And so what do you think happened? A Bodhi leaf fell into my right palm. And it was as if it was like, that's right, Ajahn Achalo. You should develop consistent discipline and patience. And it's not just about being peaceful every time. It's about making this effort and just being there. And then, so another thing happened. I was there for a month. And a couple of weeks later, you know, stuff comes up in India. It's a really intense place. And if you have a relationship with anyone, a friendship or a partner or whatever, it will definitely be challenged. I always make a deal with whoever I go to India with. I said, I want to make a deal with you. I say, after we've had our conflict, that we promise that we'll still be friends. Because, you know, it's like it's so dirty and it's so noisy and you get sick and the food isn't as nutritious and basically it's stressful. And it's also wonderful. But at some point, you know, people's stuff gets triggered and there are conflicts. So we make this kind of deal that we forgive each other. So one of the lay people who was there with me, she was going through some difficulties, and another of the lay people I was with, we'd had an appointment and he didn't show up, and I was looking at my watch and I was thinking, so I didn't wait for very long. I thought, you know what, I spent too long with the one discussing the various issues and problems, and then I was disappointed he didn't show up, and I got to the tree and I only had 45 minutes instead of an hour and a half or whatever it was, and I just had this thought. I said, you know what, Ajahn Achalo, you have to be really determined to not get caught up in other people's karma. Yes, you have to have compassion, but don't get unnecessarily caught up, and maintain your focus, because that's why you came here and that's why people supported you to be here. And what do you think happened? I was sitting under the tree. So at that stage, a Bodhi leaf fell in my left hand. I was like, that's right. And it seemed to be kind of a that's right. Maintain your focus. Don't get caught up unnecessarily. Come here and practice. So that was, those were nice experiences. Another experience was I was doing Tibetan-style bows actually at this particular time, because I saw those Tibetans doing those bows and I thought that's a very beautiful thing to do, and I tried doing walking meditation in Bodh Gaya. It's very difficult. Sometimes there's 10,000 people in that one compound, and they don't walk backwards and forwards, they walk in circles. So it's difficult. And I thought, well, one thing that might be nice, because it's actually not that dissimilar to walking meditation, in as much as you're doing this physical activity, this kind of bowing, and then you go down, and then you go up, and there's particular steps, and it's quite similar to kind of, okay, so I thought I'd try it. And then I tried it, and then it's like, this sense of wanting to express gratitude, wanting to express respect to the Buddha. And then you can get your own kind of bowing board, and you realize that the temple's right there and the Bodhi tree's right there, and you can actually take the Bodhi tree and the place of the Buddha's enlightenment as your meditation object. And I started to do that. I felt very rapturous. I thought, oh, this is really lovely practice. And some of the Thai people and the Thai monks were looking at me, so it was very strange. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take refuge in my intention. And I did it anyway. So I decided that I was going to do 10,000 because I was there for a month. And I did do 10,000, and this was during that same time when the Bodhi leaves. So what happened was, after the 10,000th bow, a senior monk from the Vajrayana tradition walked past my bowing board. His name is Ling Rinpoche. He was the Dalai Lama's senior tutor, if that means anything to anyone. But so he just kind of walked humbly right in front of my bowing board, and I just finished my 10,000th bow, and I thought, that's interesting. And then he went and he sat under the Bodhi tree, and I could see where he was, and I said, well, I should pay respects to him, because I do have faith that some of these very high lamas have a lot of accumulated virtue, and if one has the opportunity to pay respects to any monk or nun that is truly well developed, well, then that is for our benefit. So I put on my robe and I went and I paid respects to him, and it was a very nice thing that I said, oh, Rinpoche, I don't have any gifts. I wasn't expecting to see you, but I'd like to pay respects. And I paid respects, and we were under the Bodhi tree, and then he handed me a Bodhi leaf. And that was just a sense that perhaps, again, we don't know, but to get through those 10,000 bows was hard work. And I just got through them. And I said, so maybe that was a kind of like an anumodana, or a rejoice in this effort. So of course to do 10,000 full-length prostrations in Bodh Gaya isn't such a big deal, because the Mahayanists count their bows in sets of hundreds of thousands. But for a kind of a middle-aged, fat, white guy, 10,000 seemed like a pretty good effort, I thought. And I did get that Bodhi leaf at the at the end of the 10,000. So interesting things happening in Bodh Gaya. Now most recently, and this was I think even a little bit more amazing, most recently I was in Bodh Gaya again. So in Thailand, Bangkok's a 3.5-hour flight from Bodh Gaya, and lots of Thai people go to Bodh Gaya these days. So it's not so difficult to get there, thank goodness. And so I've gone every second year for the past 8 years. And if I go, I'll tend to spend a month, because I like to do a lot of practice. And I go with some students, sometimes some other monks. But this time I found from meditating a lot under the Bodhi tree that there's a particular spot which is more peaceful, which is more helpful. There's a lot of noise and there's a lot happening, a lot of people. And so on the very first day I went down and I said, I can't see the Devas, but I have confidence that they're there. And so I said, Devas who support practitioners, Devas who live in the Bodhi tree, I have this intention. I want to sit meditation 200 hours in the next 45 days, under the Bodhi tree. And there's this particular place that I find conducive. And so if you think that it's appropriate, if you would support it, if you could please help that space to be available when I come down with my cushion in the morning. So I know, before I even finish this paragraph, I just want to say, I'm not making any claims to being special. What I'm saying is that the Devas, I believe, the Devas of the Bodhi tree are very kind. And so what ended up happening was, I came down every day for 40 days, and every single day without fail, that space under the right next to the stupa, just before the Jongkron paths, where if people have been, there's this little space, and one can face the stupa, and the tree kind of wraps around that corner, just there, and there's not much traffic. People are talking a lot as they get to the Bodhi tree, and they get to the Bodhi tree, they get some awe, they get some reverence, and they tend to be hushed here for a few seconds. So this is a nice place to sit, and so I like to sit there. And so some days it was very crowded. Many different teachers were passing through. There was the Theravadan Pali Tripitaka recitation. There was like this thousands of Theravadins, Cambodians, Laos, Khmers that were doing their Pali recitation. It was really beautiful to sit and listen to Pali being chanted in all these different accents, coming from every different direction. And then the Karmapa came through, actually gave his teachings in the temple, so there was all these people from Hong Kong and Taiwan. But what was interesting was I came down and I came around that little corner, and that little space, even sometimes everything else was full, that little space was available. So it's just like, And the point again I'm making is, if there are these subtle body beings that want to support practice, well then it's really good to be clear about what kind of support we need. So sometimes if you make it clear what your intention is, you can actually ask for specific support. Because I believe anyway that there are these beings that want to help practitioners, but they also need to know what you need, and they also need to know what your intention is. So it's like, sometimes if we set a clear goal and we say, this is what I would like to do, and if the benevolent influences in the universe could support that, that would be really helpful. It doesn't mean that they will, but and we shouldn't get too attached to it, and we shouldn't get upset if they don't. But it's a good thing to do, because just in case we might get a bit of help. So with that, once again, I had 2 chest infections in Bodh Gaya last time, but I did manage to get through that 200-hour sitting. So I'm very grateful to have that. The other thing that happened was, about halfway through, I was walking 3 kilometers to and from the temple where I was staying, and I got a bit fed up with lugging the sitting mat and the cushion, because it's cold marble, and you have to have something in winter. And so I decided after 10 days or so to leave my mat and my cushion in that spot folded up. And people said to me, it's going to get stolen, this is India, it's going to get stolen. And I said, okay, well it might get stolen, but it didn't. So it stayed there for 3 weeks and it didn't get stolen. And many other people were saying, that's amazing, I've never seen anything left under the Bodhi tree with it didn't get stolen. So just my kind of sense of that, if one makes a sincere effort, it's possible that benevolent influences will try to support us and try to take care of us. So just a little bit more talk about this sense of ghosts, devas and humans. So as I started this talk saying that the Buddha was explaining that the standard to be truly human is keeping these 5 precepts, at least most of the time. This is what makes our mind a human mind. And then this is what makes human rebirth likely, probable. And then similarly, if we are unethical, if we don't keep our virtue very well, it's quite possible that we talk about the Nagas. Like from what I hear about the Nagas, and most people believe in Nagas, this serpent realm. I don't want to offend the Nagas because I know there are very good Nagas, but generally, from what my teachers have told me, the Nagas have a lot of merit, and they're talented. They have barami, they would say in Thailand. They have talents, they're skillful, they have a lot of merit, but they didn't keep the 5 precepts, so they get born in this serpent realm. And it's said that you can't realize Dhamma in that realm because it's too much pleasure. So they experience a lot of rapture and a lot of sensuality in that realm, and it's a kind of a passionate, very sensual realm apparently, but you can't realize Dhamma in that realm. So it's possible, it's not necessarily that if you didn't keep 5 precepts you have to be born as some kind of miserable ghost. You might be born as a type of deva which has a lot of pleasure, but you might not be able to realize Dhamma in that state. So it's like, it's good to have that we set this intention in terms of rebirth. So some people wonder, modern Buddhist practitioners wonder, is the whole heaven, hell, ghost, animal thing, is it a metaphor? Is it all really in the present moment? Cosmology, maybe I don't need to take that on, maybe I should understand this as a metaphor. My own personal feeling is that it's both. It's in the present moment, and it is a metaphor, and it's something that we can practice within the present moment. So you can understand that if you're feeling patient and benevolent and kind and loving and kind and radiant and spacious, okay, so you've got a deva's mind state right there. And that's in your human body, but the mind's on the level of a deva in that moment. So similarly, someone's hurt our feelings and we're feeling really dejected and we fall into a serious depression. And there's a feeling of heaviness and sadness. Oh, it's just not fair, and here we are again. And well, that's a ghost's mind state, isn't it? Right there in this human body, there's a ghost's mind state. And then anger, you might get really angry. Someone says something again, and you might be really upset about it. They've said it 100 times, you've asked them not to, and you get really angry, it's just not fair, he should know better, and you get really, really angry. So this could be like an asura or a demonic or a yaka. This is kind of an angry giant, kind of right there in this human body. We have these mind states that... so I think it's the case that the level of the mind from moment is functioning on different realms. And then the thing that's going to at the end of our life, if one is interested in a rebirth, at the end of the life it's like, well, what has the level of the mind been mostly? And then you've got a pretty good guess for where it's going to go. So if you've been mostly human, you'll probably have a human birth. But if you've been hanging around on the animal realm quite a bit, it's likely that that's where it's going to go, or the Naga realm. Similarly, if you're very good with your precepts, you meditate a lot, you're generous, you're forgiving, you practice a lot of metta, it's quite likely that you could go to a Deva realm if that's where you wanted to go. The most important thing I try to recommend to people is that they set the intention to wish to continue to practice. So I don't think you need to even determine whether you want to be a human or you want to be a Deva, that you just set that as the intention, that I want to continue to grow in this path of dana, sila and mental cultivation, and so may I be born in the place which is most conducive to that. And then just if you set that as your firm intention, and then the other thing to be careful of course, is when we're dying. And I talk quite a bit about death meditation, and I encourage people to do death meditation and to recollect scenarios where one might die, possible scenarios, for several reasons. Obviously to develop the insight into impermanence that all Buddhist practitioners need to keep cultivating, but also to be somewhat ready, so that when the time that we're dying comes, that we're not taken to by surprise and having a panic response or a response of incredible attachment, because the mind state that you're having at that time of death is also, my teachers have explained, two most important factors. The first most important factor, the level of the mind this lifetime. The realm that you've actually been functioning on psychically is going to have a large determining factor. The other most important determining factor is the mindset at the time of death. So even if you've been a good person, if you haven't done any contemplation of death and death comes and you totally freak out at that time, it's going to be difficult to have a virtuous rebirth. So, and to just kind of contemplate that. Like, we've all had that experience where you're walking along and you slip. And you can just get a glimpse of that incredible anxiety and grasping that comes up, that kind of sense of, so if that's what it's like when you slip, when you're frightened about, and what's it going to be like when you're really confronted with the fact that, okay, the body is dying, it's time to go. You have to let go of everything you know, now. So if we don't do some preparation from that, it's not going to be easy to let go of it. And what's that feeling of you think you lost something in the car, something that's important to you, or you lost your credit card, or you left your car keys. So you're walking down the thing and you realize, my car keys, my credit card, and there's a sense of, oh no! It's like, well, it's just kind of, what's it going to be like when you confront it? And sometimes you might not have much warning, but what's it going to be like? But it's not just the credit card, it's not just the car key, it's not just the cars, it's everything. And you've got this moment to let it go. Well, sometimes we have some warning, and if we do, that's good, but we might not. So I think it is really important understanding that the implications for our rebirth is that, one, try to accumulate quite a bit of virtue if you can, try to be an ethical person, meditate a lot, but also contemplate death so that you'll be ready for it. And hopefully that you can be born into a benevolent situation. Because I don't know if you realize it, but your current situation is incredibly benevolent. And Australians, we can overlook this. We don't realize that you're sitting on a mountain of merit. And it's good if you use your mountain of merit. I like that phrase, mountain of merit. And it's good to be aware of it, and it's like we don't want to lose it. So you have opportunities, and you want your opportunity to continue. So you have to sow the causes for that. And it's like, another example I give, suppose I'm going to India again. I have to get a visa. I'm aware of which medicines I'll likely need, the diarrhea medicine, the chest infection medicine. I try to get a whole bunch of supplements so that hopefully I won't get an infection. I do anyway, but I take the supplements just in case. And then I believe that the supplements will help get better more quickly. But basically, I get the warm underwear, I get the supplements, I get the medicine, I get the antibacterial cream, I get the iodine, I get a whole bunch of stuff. And I put some thought into it, and I get the visa, and I make sure my passport's valid, and I know what time the plane's leaving, and basically you plan it, don't you? And you put some thought into it, and you're careful. So that's just within this world that's going somewhere that I've been before. You put all this care into something. So if people can understand that their death is like this huge trip that you really should prepare for. So it's like, how do you prepare for it? Accumulate lots of good karma if you can. So if people tell you that something produces a lot of merit, if it makes good sense, do it. And if something produces demerit, if something's going to weigh the mind down, darken the mind, cause obstructions, don't do it, or at least do it as little as possible. And then meditate a lot, so that that part of the mind which can not identify with phenomena with too much attachment, sense of personal identification, that there's a little bit of spaciousness, a little bit of clarity, some practice with non-identification. And then contemplating death, so that when it occurs, you hear this, like an example of my father had a stroke 2 years ago, a very serious stroke. And my mum, she's 73 now, she said, I couldn't believe it. I was thinking, is this a dream? Is it television? It's like, I said, what? And she said, when he was dying. And I said, well, it's not surprising, because for someone who hasn't contemplated death, that's what it's going to be like, isn't it? And it's like, no, Mum. Mum, how old are you now? 71. I said, and you have not yet seriously considered, despite the fact that I've been telling you for 12 years, that death... death is like the next big thing for you guys. And but no, they don't. Even with a monk as a son, they don't really take it to heart. And that's another little story I might tell you. It's like my dad's near-death experience, which he didn't die, was I was in England. One last story before I was in England at the time, and my father had a huge stroke, and I had a mobile phone at that time. My father had prostate cancer a few years ago, and since that time I've had a mobile phone, trying to keep in touch. The Buddha said one shouldn't reject one's family, so your parents in particular, so I try to keep in touch even in other parts of the world. So I had my mobile phone, and I was at the meal line putting food in the bowl, and I got a text message, and not many people had the number, so I didn't get many messages. So I went and I had a look, and my brother said, you better call now. And so I called him, and he said, well, I got some bad news. Dad's had a stroke. I said, yeah, okay. And the doctor said he'll be dead within 5 hours. So this was and then also one sees at these moments one's attachment. This was a good for me to glimpse my attachment to the mother and father. Was just instant. Tears came to the eyes in that moment, even with a lot of meditation, even with a lot of mindfulness, even with a lot of practice, the fact that Dad's going to be dead in 5 hours. And then so I called, and my mother, I'm not going to talk about this too long because I'll cry, but anyway, my mum I actually said goodbye to my dad over the phone. She put the phone to his ear. She was by his side. And then I was walking back, and I thought, okay, well, I didn't want to take the meal that day, so I put down the bowl. And I was walking back, and I started crying. And I thought, I had enough mindfulness to think, crying might not be the most helpful thing right now. Why don't you do a puja for your dad? Why don't you do some chanting? So I put a picture of my mum and dad on the shrine, and I don't know. Anyway, I dedicated merit to him, and I was doing some chanting, and I was thanking him. And then I had this thought, you should call Ajahn, because Ajahn also has a mobile phone. So I stopped my puja halfway through, and I called Ajahn, I said, and he answered the phone from England to Thailand, and I said, Ajahn Achalo, could you please bless my father? And help him to have an auspicious rebirth. And Ajahn made this noise, he was very displeased to hear this news. And so he said, okay, he'll do what he could. So I put down the phone, and I went back to my puja, and I was dedicating the merit to my father. And anyway, I got another call, also on the mobile phone. It was my brother, and he said, sorry. These are kind of happy tears. He said, I don't know what happened, but Dad just became conscious again. And he just walked to the bathroom. So what I think was occurring in that occasion, and he's still alive now, by the way, we just had, my twin brother got married at Brunswick Heads on the beach 2 weeks ago, and I chanted Purita at the ceremony. It was one of those kind of Byron Bay beach weddings. I didn't go to the party. but I chanted a parita at the beach. And anyway, my mum and my dad were there, and it's the first time in 23 years that all 6 children were there in one place. So it was a nice occasion. But what I think was occurring there is that, there's a certain amount of merit if you live a virtuous life, and I was dedicating that merit to my father. And then someone like Ajahn Achalo has the skill to probably make sure that the file gets through. And so I suspect that he was using his samadhi to get that merit that I was dedicating and get it to that situation. And so, Mum and Dad are still here for now, and we're all still here for now. So encourage us to grow in this path of dana and sila, meditation. And if anyone has any questions about things I've been talking about, it's okay. You can ask some questions, make some comments.
It was interesting you told about this Bodh falling by the same day happened in
Okay.
It was my birthday in December. In Buddha, and they gave some time, it was winter time.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to get a leaf, no leaf, so we were sitting there. Suddenly, a little leaf, half brown, half green, just dropped in front of us.
Falls in front of you, yeah.
And from nowhere, a lot of people jumped.
Everybody wants it, yeah. Very good. I do believe that the Devas of the Bodhi tree are involved in these kind of things. That's very nice.
Okay. Did you talk to your father about his after-death experience?
This is the amazing thing. Like, he can't remember anything. And to me and to all of my friends in Thailand, it's so obvious that my doing the puja and Ajahn and helping was involved. No one in my family has any faith at all. The doctor described my father's recovery as miraculous. He said he had never seen such a thing before. My father still drives, he has no paralysis. He had a huge frontal lobe bleed, it was huge. And he has some damage in the area of numbers and dates, but basically he still drives, he knows who everyone is. It was a miraculous recovery. He doesn't remember anything.
And when you were doing the puja, did you feel that your father would come through?
Something shifted. Like, I was doing this puja through tears, and all of a sudden I stopped crying, and I was thinking, where's that food? Because I put down my alms bowl. Something definitely shifted. And I was past midday now, kind of. So halfway through that puja there was this sense of, oh. And then my brother called up and said, he just walked to the bathroom.
Your family still Buddhist today?
No, they're not Buddhists. It's this Australian thing, as if I was going to be religious, I might be Buddhist. And it's kind of apathy, and that kind of like what my mum says is like, is it a movie? It's like, no, Mum. It's like, but they are good people. They are good people, but they're not, for whatever reason, not particularly receptive yet. And my mum did have this is an interesting story too. My mum had a vision of Ajahn standing in her room, smiling at her. And since that time, she developed some faith, because she hadn't met him. So then she asked me to look at photographs, and she's like, yeah, that's him. So he wasn't sending a divine body. What he was doing was sending loving kindness. I asked what he was doing, and so apparently what happens is if someone has very deep meditation, when they send their loving kindness, it's like a carbon copy. An image of the person who's sending it goes with it. And so apparently my mum had enough sensitivity in her mind to be able to perceive that at that time. She was lying in bed and she couldn't sleep. And she saw this monk standing in the room smiling at her. And a monk she'd never met before. So she did pay respects to Lumpur Liam, and Lumpur Liam came to Brisbane. She had enough faith to go and offer some chocolate and to bow. So that took about 14 years of effort to get to get that result.
But now, Sariputra's mum did not accept Buddha's teachings in the last moment.
That's right. And she had to see Brahma come and pay respects to Sariputta. Before she could, And also in Thailand, and I think here also many people have dreams sometimes. After people have died, they dream of the person. And sometimes they dream of them as looking a bit hungry and not having good clothes. And then they'll go into the temple and make a bunch of offerings, and they'll have another dream and they'll see them happy. And so it's like, sometimes it seems that consciousness is in a state where it might be experiencing some difficulties, but if making particular types of merit and dedicating that merit, that somehow it's able to affect that being. Again, I don't know, we don't have the skills to really see it, but it's just as a monk who's becoming more senior and speaking Thai and receiving more guests in Thailand, I hear this a lot, that someone's parents died and they had a dream where they seemed to be experiencing some difficulty. They made particular types of offerings and they had a subsequent dream where they appeared to be not experiencing difficulty. So I think just, again, there seems to be so much, I don't know if you call it evidence, but at least, a lot of people have experience of this, and seems to be something to this, generating merit consciously and dedicating it consciously can have effects, possibly for those in this world and also those already moving on to other worlds and other realms. Yeah.
Ajahn, just a quick question, just a quick last question.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about that, let's say if it's a patient lying in bed there, it's under morphine because of great pain. So
Yeah.
will the consciousness still be there, although the feeling is numb because of the morphine injections, and the person do pass away, let's say? So
It's still conscious or not?
would the consciousness still be there?
Are they conscious? Are their eyes open? Can
No,
they
they're
talk?
not.
Oh.
Because they are, when a person
Close
is
to
in
death,
great
you mean?
pain, the doctor generally inject morphine. Sedative.
So it's like close to death, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not too sure very close to it, but under medical terms I know that when the patient is in great pain
Yeah.
and they're dying, the family will say let the patient die painlessly.
Yeah,
Right?
but
So
that's,
they inject a lot of sedative or
no, it's not a good thing. Their consciousness is, I believe consciousness is there and it's completely stoned.
stone.
Yeah, it's not a good thing to do. So it's like, it's for the comfort of the people witnessing. It's not for the comfort of the person dying. So the reason I can say that is that there's a hospital in Bangkok called Samithiwait Hospital. The director is a good meditator. She's a very good practitioner. And a monk was dying in that hospital. And he told her, he said, you know how you have this practice of giving them drugs, these people as they're dying, you give them a lot of drugs so that they can't move and so that they don't cry out. So he said, it's a really bad karma, because that consciousness still in the body is basically very drunk, and then it leaves that body very confused. So, and that monk, I think, died in a meditation posture in the hospital, if I remember the story correctly. So he was a very gifted monk. So he recommended that they give some sedative and some pain relief to take the edge off, but not so much that they're not making any noise or anything. So although a person can't speak anymore, if consciousness is leaving, I've heard many stories when people come back from that state that they were aware of what was happening in the room. They were aware of who came to see and who didn't. They were aware of what was said. So it's like awareness can still be there, and it's almost like the divine ear or the subtle ear that devas have. As a person's close to death gets developed in the human mind, as those, they call it the elements open up and consciousness is about to move, it gets a heightened awareness. So some people have these experiences in surgery as well, that although part of the consciousness is sedated, some people can remember what the doctors and the nurses were saying. So it's like good to be in the middle way with these things. Like if I'm dying and I really have a lot of pain from cancer and stuff, I definitely want some morphine, please, if you're there. And if any of you are there when that's happening, if that happens. But not so much that. So you want to take the edge off it, so that you want the person still to be practicing mindfulness. You don't want them just like a vegetable.